He called it a minor oversight. That's how Ethan Cross, our beloved CEO at Helion Group, with the emotional range of a spreadsheet, described the moment he credited the risk team for a $12 million save I had engineered solo. I was standing 3 feet away during the quarterly town hall, nodding like a well-trained intern while my stomach clenched under my blazer. Not even a glance in my direction, not a name drop. Just, our team did an incredible job mitigating exposure on the Lyra deal. Our team. The only person who actually lifted a finger was me. The rest were in Lake Tahoe that week, skiing while the compliance deadline almost detonated our entire liquidity position. And you know what I did after? Nothing. I smiled. I even clapped, because that's what you do when you've worked 8 years at a venture firm where charm beats competence, and where being a woman who speaks in complete sentences counts as abrasive. You learn invisibility. You master the art of being overlooked until silence becomes your native language, until one day, it doesn't. That day started like any other. I was in the office by 7:30, triple-checking the board prep deck for our quarterly performance call. Ethan strolled in at 9:15 with a protein smoothie and that self-satisfied swagger of a man who thought vision was a personality. I watched him delete 2 slides I'd spent the weekend perfecting. His reason? Too many words, Ava. Board wants vibes, not essays. Because apparently, literacy was a risk factor. If you've ever felt that internal spark, that quiet ignition deep in your ribs that whispers no more, then you'll understand what happened next. I didn't argue. I didn't sigh. I simply closed my laptop, smiled, and said, I've got a dentist appointment. Instead of heading to any dentist, I drove to the edge of the city, to an old co-working space I hadn't visited since 2020, back when hope still fit inside a coffee mug. The sign outside still read Ironhouse Labs, though the place had shuttered during the pandemic. It was here, years ago, that I'd once drafted a placeholder LLC out of sheer daydreaming. A name, a framework, nothing more. I'd called it Vector Arc Capital. At the time, it was a joke. An escape hatch that existed only in paperwork and wishful thinking. But that morning, it didn't feel like a joke anymore. It felt like prophecy. I pulled out my laptop and scrolled through old encrypted emails until I found the registration file. There it was, active, untouched, waiting. Ethan's voice echoed in my head from a month earlier, his chuckle slicing through the noise of a happy hour at some overpriced Manhattan bar. Oh, Ava and her phantom fund, he'd said, drink in hand, smirk calibrated for humiliation. She's probably got ghost investors whispering in her spreadsheets. Laughter, polite and sharp. I even fake laughed, because that's what professionalism demanded, grace under mockery. But I remembered every word. That night, alone in my apartment overlooking the East River, I realized I didn't want a promotion anymore. I wanted distance, control, leverage. The next morning at Helion, people were still congratulating the risk team for the Lyra deal I'd saved. Someone even said, "Great job, everyone," in the hallway. I smiled back, because correcting people who don't care to know the truth is a losing game. By 4 p.m., the analyst I had mentored, Jason Keller, posted on LinkedIn, thrilled to step into the new strategy lead role, humbled and grateful. That was my framework. The role I'd written, pitched, refined, the one I was told didn't fit our org chart. And there he was, grinning in a suit 2 sizes too big, basking in the likes from partners who couldn't tell competence from charisma. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I just stared at his post until the words blurred. Then I opened a private browser, scrolled through my Do Not Contact Unless on Fire folder, and typed, "Hi. We spoke once before about an alternative fund structure. I'm ready to talk." I hit send. That message wasn't a cry for help. It was a spark. And once lit, there was no going back. The bar was called the Brass Lantern, the kind of place that couldn't decide if it was rustic or upscale, and failed spectacularly at both. Edison bulbs dangled from the ceiling, jazz played through cheap speakers, and the cocktails had names like Whiskey Business and Executive Order. It was Friday, which at Helion meant leadership happy hour, code for pretend to enjoy gin while your superiors measure your humiliation tolerance. Ethan was already 2 drinks in when I arrived. His tie was gone, sleeves rolled up, posture loose with practiced arrogance. He was holding court by the bar, surrounded by half-drunk managers laughing too loudly at his recycled jokes. I wasn't listening until I heard my name. "Ava's got this wild idea," he slurred to our CFO, Ryan Alden, his grin already loaded with malice. "She wants us to spin out some fancy new division. Says she's got a shadow investor or something." The crowd chuckled. Ethan leaned in, enjoying himself. "I told her, unless your phantom fund can make payroll, maybe keep that one in your drafts folder." Laughter. Real, ugly laughter. Someone even said, "Spooky season came early." Ethan grinned wider, pleased with himself, the man who thought mockery was mentorship. I didn't flinch. I took a sip of my seltzer and stared through him. Inside, though, something shifted, a cold, precise clarity. It wasn't anger. It was realization. They would never take me seriously. I could outwork them, outthink them, outlast them, and still, I'd be the intense one, the woman who needed to smile more. When I got home that night, my inbox pinged. Subject: big moves. It was from Jason, the Jason I had mentored when he didn't know EBITDA from alphabet soup. His message was pure self-congratulation. Grateful to announce my new role as strategy lead. Couldn't have done it without my mentors. Attached was a selfie in the executive wing, coffee in hand, eyes full of ambition he hadn't earned. I stared at it for a minute before hitting delete. Then I reopened my private browser. There was one name I hadn't considered in years. Julia Venn, Managing Director of Capital Operations at Riversend Bank. I'd met her once, back when Helion was circling a distressed asset deal that nearly imploded. Julia had been on the other side of the table. Flawless suit, sharp eyes, a reputation for cutting through egos like glass. After that deal closed, she told me, "You've got teeth, Ava. Most people in your seat just chew air." I never forgot that. So I drafted an email. Subject: possible collaboration. "Hi, Julia. Not sure if you remember me. Ava Morales, Helion Group. We worked together on the Kingsley asset restructure. I've been exploring a new independent vehicle, and I think it's something you'll want to see. My pipeline is strong. I just need to light the fuse. Best, Ava." I didn't second-guess it. I didn't reread it 3 times like I normally would. I just sent it. Then I stood in my tiny kitchen, staring out at the glow of the Brooklyn skyline, waiting for regret to show up. It didn't. Instead, I felt something else. Heat. Not warmth, but that sharp, buzzing electricity that comes when you know you've crossed the point of no return. The reply came the next morning. Short, precise, and devastatingly calm. "Ava, of course I remember. Let's talk. Tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. My office. Bring your war stories. No small talk, no emoji, no preamble. Just an invitation disguised as a test." I didn't sleep much that night. My mind kept replaying Ethan's smirk, the laughter at the bar, Jason's ridiculous selfie. But beneath it all was something steadier. A rhythm, like the pulse of a drum that had been waiting years to start again. When dawn finally broke, I already knew what I'd wear. Navy blazer, black slacks, simple gold studs. The same outfit I'd worn the day I signed my first deal at Helion, the day I thought loyalty mattered. Tomorrow, it would mean something else entirely. Julia Venn's office looked like a cathedral built for capitalism. Polished concrete, matte black glass, and a skyline view so sharp it felt weaponized. The cab dropped me off 10 minutes early. My palms were dry, my pulse steady, every move calculated. No Helion badge, no laptop carrying the fingerprints of my past. Just me, a leather portfolio, and a flash drive I hadn't touched since 2019. When I stepped through the double doors, Julia didn't rise to greet me. She didn't need to. "Ava Morales," she said in that velvet-edged tone that could make a senator confess tax fraud. "Been a while?" "Sit." I did. "Tell me what you want." No cappuccino offers, no small talk, just 5 words that cut through the air like a scalpel. "I want out," I said. My voice didn't waver, but not quietly, and not empty-handed. Her eyebrow arched slightly. "Go on. I started something a few years back. A shell, really. Vector Arc Capital. It's structured as a lean spine-out vehicle. I've got the bones of a compliance and fintech hybrid model that Helion doesn't even know exists. The data flows, vendor network, the architecture. I built it all under their radar." Julia's eyes sharpened. "Why me?" "Because you fund speed, not safety," I said. "And because I know where Helion's oxygen line is buried." That made her smile, a small, dangerous smile. She stood, crossed to her desk, and pulled out a single silver business card. "Here's what I can offer," she said, handing it to me. "You bring me leverage." "Real leverage." "I don't fund dreams, Ava. I fund detonators. You show me the pressure point that makes Helion flinch, and I'll light your fuse." I didn't need her to say more. I nodded, slipped the card into my folder, and walked out, feeling the quiet buzz of inevitability humming behind my ribs. Back home, I powered up my private data vault, a secure offline server I'd set up years ago under a dummy alias. It had been dormant for months, untouched, waiting for exactly this moment. Inside was 8 years' worth of everything Helion had ever swept under the rug. Late filings, quiet cover-ups, vendor reshuffles, accounting adjustments. I'd fixed most of them myself, in silence, to protect the firm's precious reputation. But fixing things means seeing things, and I'd seen enough to know where the rot started. One file stopped me cold. Loan Covenant Schedule, Riversend Facility.pdf. Helion's prized trophy, its $70 million revolving credit line from Riversend Bank, was the secret backbone of its entire liquidity model. It kept the firm breathing when markets tightened. The covenant terms were brutal, filled with personnel triggers, performance tests, and quarterly certifications. One clause stood out in bold legalese. Any removal or replacement of key named personnel will initiate immediate covenant review. Failure to meet compliance thresholds upon review grants the lender the right to recall or freeze the facility in full. And there it was. My name. Ava Morales, Director, Strategic Development. I stared at it for a long moment, heartbeat flattening into calm clarity. Ethan didn't even know this clause existed. He'd never read beyond the summary his assistant prepared. The man who mocked me in front of half the firm was too lazy to realize his liquidity pipeline was tied, legally and financially, to me. If I left, if I triggered the clause, Riversend could recall the full $70 million with zero notice. It wasn't just a weak spot. It was the detonator Julia wanted. By midnight, I had 5 folders labeled legal loopholes, covenant exposure, compliance gaps, personnel dependencies, and Helion lies. Each one filled with receipts, emails, revisions, audit trails, timestamps, and compliance cert logs that painted a perfect picture of negligence. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just built. Because after 8 years of protecting Helion, I was finally ready to unprotect it. When I clicked Update LLC Filing and reactivated Vector Arc Capital, I whispered to myself, "Time to haunt the hunters." Julia didn't waste words. The next morning, a single message from her assistant popped into my encrypted inbox. Investor committee wants teeth. Bring bite marks. No attachments, no signatures. Just that. It wasn't a request for a pitch deck. It was a call for ammunition. She wasn't interested in my dreams of independence. She wanted proof that I could topple Helion Group from the inside. I rolled up my sleeves and dove in. The internal ledger was buried behind 3 layers of firewall and a VPN so thick even our CTO had to beg finance for access. Luckily, I'd built half those security layers myself. Within an hour, I was inside. At first glance, everything looked normal. Quarterly revenue projections were stable, expense ratios within acceptable margins. But I knew better. I wasn't looking for the obvious. I was hunting the invisible. The cracks that polite audits never touch. And then I saw it, a timing anomaly so small, it would have slipped past anyone else. In Q3 revolving credit utilization logs, the draw from Riversend's $70 million facility hit Helion's account at 6:43 a.m. According to covenant policy, the compliance certification for that quarter had to be submitted by 6 o'clock a.m. sharp. Anything later made the draw conditional, not compliant. A 43-minute gap. On paper, meaningless. Legally, catastrophic. The certification timestamp in Helion's audit system read 7:12 a.m., a full hour after the covenant window closed. In plain English, that meant the $70 million draw was in technical violation of the loan terms. Riversend could, by contract, recall the entire line without warning or negotiation. I sat back in my chair, staring at the flickering cursor on my notes app. It wasn't fear humming in my chest. It was certainty. That subtle, perfect stillness when you know you've found the loose thread that unravels the whole tapestry. I had my bite mark. Now I needed to sharpen it into a weapon. Julia didn't just want leverage. She wanted spectacle. Something her investors could salivate over. Something that made them lean forward and say, yes, fund her. So I built it. Slide by slide, I constructed a pitch that looked less like a presentation and more like an autopsy. Slide 1. Helion Group's credit structure, with the Riversend line circled in red. Slide 2. Covenant timeline, annotated with timestamps proving the breach. Slide 3. Internal emails confirming the late certification, tagged with metadata. Slide 4. My solution. Vector Arc Capital's Independence Plan, a new fund leveraging Helion's negligence into opportunity. Slide 5. Market gap analysis, showing the fintech niches Helion had ignored in pursuit of vanity projects. Slide 6. Contingency map titled Drop Event. Step-by-step protocol detailing what would happen if Helion retaliated or tried to discredit me. It wasn't just clean. It was lethal. The kind of document that could silence a boardroom. When I finished, I encrypted the deck, attached it to a secure link, and wrote Julia a message. It's ready. You'll find your detonator inside. Her reply came 20 minutes later. About time someone lit a match. That night, I didn't celebrate. No wine, no music, just me, my laptop, and the quiet hum of the city bleeding through the window. Because this wasn't triumph yet. It was prelude. By the next morning, things at Helion began to shift in that subtle, poisonous way corporate politics always move. Side glances in the elevator. Slack messages left on read. Invitations quietly disappearing from my calendar. HR suddenly wanted a quick alignment chat. They smelled smoke, but they had no idea where the fire was. That afternoon, I got another message from Julia. Term sheet pending. Riversend's risk team likes your documentation. Final condition. Demonstration of leverage. Board-level audience required. A public trigger. A show. Julia's world didn't believe in quiet exits. If I wanted $100 million in funding, I'd have to make Helion's collapse a broadcast. I closed my eyes, exhaled, and whispered to no one. Then we'll give them a show. The calendar invite came from HR, but the tone was pure Ethan. Subject, quick career chat. Just us. Nothing says ambush quite like a smiley face from a department that still uses clip art in their PowerPoints. I showed up 5 minutes early. Neutral colors, hair pinned, posture calm. The conference room was predictably cold, Helion's standard climate for warm conversations. Diane, head of People Ops, sat at one end of the table, fingers poised on her laptop like she was about to transcribe a war crime. Ethan strolled in late, coffee in hand, wearing that same effortless smirk, the one that said he thought charm was a currency. "Ava," he said, settling into his seat, "we've been hearing some chatter. Nothing official, just signals, pulse checks, people talking about you exploring other options." He dragged out other options like it was a slur. "You know how small this industry is." Diane smiled, her eyes performing empathy. "We just want to make sure you feel supported. You've been such a valuable part of Helion for so long. We want to protect your legacy." "My legacy." The irony almost made me laugh. "I appreciate that," I said evenly, "but my work speaks for itself." Ethan leaned back, leather chair groaning under the weight of ego. "You're a high-value asset, Ava. I'd hate to see you make rash moves that might complicate things for you." There it was, the velvet threat. "Of course," I said softly. "I'll be thoughtful." The meeting wrapped in a haze of polite corporate poison. I walked out without a flicker of emotion. By the time I got back to my desk, the slow suffocation had already begun. First, my name vanished from the invite list for the upcoming strategic ops deal call. No explanation. Then, my access to the financial drive downgraded from edit to view only. My Slack channels quietly disappeared. Classic isolation strategy. Make you irrelevant before you can realize you've been erased. They thought I'd beg. They thought fear would make me crawl back. They didn't understand women like me. Instead, I opened my personal server and began my own extraction protocol. Every document I'd ever created at Helion, every financial model, risk assessment, white paper draft, vendor tree, and contact flow, was duplicated and encrypted. I rerouted it all to an offshore cloud node under a legal trust registered to Vector Arc Capital. Dual key authentication, no breadcrumbs, no fingerprints. Then I cleaned my company laptop, scrubbed the cache, cleared the logs, reset the registry. Nothing illegal, just immaculate digital hygiene. That night, the message came. Short, clean, anonymous domain. "Riversend is ready when you are." That was all it said. No greeting, no signature. Just quiet authority from the institution that held Helion's $70 million oxygen tank. I stared at it for a long moment, not because I doubted, but because I wanted to remember the stillness. That rare kind of silence before everything tilts. The boardroom laughter, Jason's smug LinkedIn post, Ethan's smirk. They all blurred into one single, precise emotion. Calm. Julia's term sheet followed an hour later through her encrypted portal. I opened it carefully, scrolling past the razor-edged legalese. $100 million in seed funding, fully committed. First tranche, available within 24 hours of my formal resignation from Helion Group. But what froze me wasn't the number. It was Clause 7.3, tucked between non-competes and vesting terms. Founding trigger shall coincide with a publicly verifiable demonstration of leverage over origin firm. Minimum audience, board level. They didn't want stealth. They wanted theater. A visible detonation. Julia's message beneath the clause said it plainly. "We don't sneak out back doors, Ava. We burn the lobby." I sat in the dark, the glow of my laptop reflecting off the window. Outside, Manhattan pulsed like it didn't care about what was coming. Inside, I could feel it, a quiet hum in my blood. Tomorrow, I'd request my quarterly update slot for the board meeting. Routine, harmless, expected. They wanted a show? I'd give them one. I submitted the board meeting request at 9:04 a.m. sharp. Quarterly strategic update. The note read, routine enough that no one blinked. The admin slotted me for 11:30 a.m. Thursday. Within minutes, Ethan commented on Slack. Looking forward to hearing your insights, Ava. The casual tone would have been funny if it weren't tragic. It was the kind of confidence that only existed in people who didn't know the floor beneath them was already cracking. I spent the next 3 days preparing what would be my final deck at Helion. Not a standard PowerPoint graveyard of charts and buzzwords, but a precision-cut instrument, every slide crafted to slice. I worked in silence, blinds drawn, coffee cold by the time I remembered to sip it. Slide 1. Helion's credit facility structure. Simple, elegant, and fatally transparent. Riversend Bank's $70 million line highlighted in scarlet red. Slide 2. The 6:43 a.m. timestamp of the draw, side by side with the 7:12 a.m. certification. Slide 3. Excerpt from the covenant agreement showing the compliance trigger clause. Slide 4. A single phrase. Non-compliance constitutes immediate recall rights. Slide 5. Vector Arc Capital. Fully funded, launch ready, independent. Slide 6. A line in bold, unblinking font. Leverage is only power when displayed. By midnight Wednesday, the slides glowed on my screen like open wounds. I encrypted the deck, uploaded it to a time-locked server, and sent Riversend a short message. You'll want to be on this call. 11:30 a.m. ES10. I go on at 11:37. Their reply came within minutes. We'll be watching. The night before, my apartment was too quiet. I poured a glass of Merlot, opened a novel I didn't read, and scrolled through old Helion photos. Holiday parties, offsites, smiles that now looked like masks. I found one from my first year, me at 29, standing in front of the Helion banner, eyes bright, believing meritocracy was real. Believing loyalty meant protection. I closed the photo. That version of me didn't exist anymore. I printed a 2-page script titled Board Meeting Notes, Q4. Page 1 contained harmless fluff, metrics, a fake projection graph, a few buzzwords about streamlined innovation. Page 2 held the trigger. Let's take this call together. It might clarify the numbers. That was all I'd have to say. Riversend would handle the rest. Before bed, I sent a sealed packet to my attorney labeled Contingency, Morales v. Helion. Inside was everything: emails, covenant documents, timestamp evidence, and a notarized affidavit confirming data authenticity. If Helion tried to retaliate, I wanted my protection airtight. At 9:41 p.m., my phone buzzed with a secure message from Julia. Timing confirmed. Riversend will join at the 7-minute mark. Don't deviate. After that, Ava, you don't owe anyone in that room another word. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I muted my phone, stood by the window, and watched Manhattan glow beneath me. Yellow taxis threading through wet streets, restaurant signs flickering like tired eyes. Everything looked so normal. It was surreal how ordinary the world stayed when you were about to end someone's fiscal quarter. I returned to the table, folded my blazer neatly over the chair, powered down my laptop, and just sat there, breathing. In through the nose, hold, out through the mouth. My therapist's voice echoed in my head. Calm isn't the absence of fear. It's control over it. And this was control. The kind that hummed beneath your skin like a wire about to spark. At 11:58 p.m., I finally went to bed. I didn't sleep. You don't sleep when you're holding dynamite and the clock's already ticking. You wait. You breathe. You listen for the silence to end. The morning would come, and with it, the sound of the fuse catching flame. The boardroom at Helion Group was always kept a few degrees too cold, as if Ethan believed mild hypothermia inspired better quarterly performance. The space gleamed with polished obsidian, 12 ergonomic chairs worth more than most employees' salaries, and a panoramic view of Midtown that made everyone feel untouchable. They'd scheduled the quarterly update early, 8:30 a.m., to seize the day. The irony was delicious. I arrived 10 minutes early, laptop in hand, expression neutral. Not cheerful, not tense, just steady. The kind of calm that comes when the worst is already behind you. One by one, the board filtered in. The retired VC who always bragged about golf scores, the ex-tech founder who spoke only in buzzwords, the CFO, Ryan, trying not to look hungover. Then Ethan, of course, perfect haircut, new navy suit, confidence radiating from him like a malfunctioning heat lamp. "Ava," he greeted, gesturing toward the screen. "Looking forward to hearing about your side project." "Appreciate the time," I said, tone even. He leaned back, arms crossed. "We hear there's a phantom investor behind your little hobby. You going to tell us who's behind the curtain, or is this one of those believe-in-yourself startups?" Polite chuckles filled the air. Safe laughter. The kind that kept careers alive. I didn't respond. I just connected my laptop, opened the presentation, and projected slide 1, Helion Group Strategic Outlook. The room stilled. Ethan smirked. "All right, let's see it." I didn't rush. I let the silence stretch, a long, uneasy pause that made one of the directors shift in her chair. Then quietly, I said, "Let's find out." At exactly 8:37 a.m., a small pop-up appeared on the corner of my screen. "Incoming call. Riverside Bank." I clicked accept. The Zoom window expanded. On it appeared Anthony Voss, Executive Director of Corporate Lending at Riverside, the man who literally held Helion's financial oxygen. Perfect suit, ice blue tie, no expression. "Good morning," he said smoothly. His voice carried the weight of finality. Ethan blinked. "Anthony, I, didn't know you were joining us today." Anthony's tone didn't change. "We're funding Ava Morales' new venture, Vector Art Capital, for $100 million, effective immediately. And as of this moment, Helion Group's outstanding credit note has been called in full." The room went silent. Completely. Ethan's smile didn't fade. It cracked. It held on his face like a corrupted video frame. One of the board members, Marcia, let out a small gasp. "Wait, what?" Anthony continued calmly. "Check your inboxes. The notice has been issued. Documentation is attached." No one moved. The weight of comprehension dropped like concrete. Ryan fumbled for his phone, muttering, "This can't be," but the words died in his throat. I closed my laptop, slid it neatly into my bag, and looked up. Ethan finally found his voice. "Ava, what the hell is this?" I met his eyes for one steady beat. "My update." Then I stood. No drama, no parting shot, just the soft sound of my heels against the tile. Behind me, chairs scraped, voices rose, panic and confusion colliding in real time. "We'll fix this," Ethan barked, his voice cracking mid-sentence. It wasn't a command anymore. It was a prayer. The CFO's hands trembled over his tablet as he reread the recall notice. The old VC muttered something about fiduciary risk. The chaos swelled, but I didn't look back. I walked out past the frosted glass wall where Helion Group gleamed in stainless steel letters. Letters that, by noon, would be the subject of a Bloomberg headline. Downstairs, the city didn't care. Taxis honked. A vendor yelled about bagels. A construction crew laughed over bad coffee. The world spun exactly as it had yesterday. At noon, my phone buzzed. Bloomberg. Former Helion VP secures 100 Malmuzzlers for fintech venture. Riversend Bank recalls Helion credit line. By 2 p.m., Forbes reposted it. FinWatch added, "Looks like someone should have taken her pitch more seriously." I didn't post a statement. Just one photo on LinkedIn. A raw shot of my new office. Unfinished concrete floors. One chair. One desk. Sunlight spilling across an empty space. Caption: "Real ghosts don't haunt. They build elsewhere." No hashtags. No mic drop. Just truth. For the first time in 8 years, I wasn't a name on someone else's slide. I was the headline, and the silence that followed, it wasn't emptiness, it was power.